The major topics for today is going to be the anxiety disorder and how we tackle that. My name is Dr. Omar. I'm a clinical fellow in women mental health. There's absolutely no conflict of interest for me to present this presentation. Some of the objects that we are going through, what definition of anxiety, some signs and symptoms, some tools that we use in order, to assess for anxiety, and some techniques that we might use, whether de-escalation, communication, pharmacological, to help us, to manage anxiety. So generally, what is anxiety? Anxiety is it's a natural response, basically, to a stress or perceived any danger that actually can be modified by physiological or psychological symptoms. The physiological symptoms may include increased heart rate, sweating, difficulty breathing, and the psychological may perhaps involve being very wary, restlessness, and difficulty in concentrating. And in some cases, those who are going through persistent symptoms with these we just mentioned, this is when we can actually consider them anxiety disorder. So whatever when we have the persistence of these symptoms over longer time, this is when it's called or termed can be termed as disorder. Um, I thought it will be just, to touch base on some important facts about the physiology behind anxiety. And I believe Dr. Gaida will go in more depth with that, but I'll be very in brief. So basically, we do have something in our brain. It's called amygdala, which is it's responsible. It's regulate our emotions, whether happy, fear, and so what happened when we perceive any threat, our brain activates a rapid response system to help us to react to that. This process starts in the amygdala, which is responsible, as I said, for detecting danger and triggering the fight or flight response, as we most of us are what that is. And then next, the HPA, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, comes into play, and it releases the stress hormones that we know most of us are aware of, which are the cortisol and adrenaline. Those ones prepare our body to deal with the threat. In the same time, the ANS, the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic system increases heart rate, speeds up the breathing, and tenses our muscles, getting us ready basically to either confront or escape the danger, which leads to our noticeable physical symptoms that we a majority are aware of it: racing hearts, rapid breathing, which is the hyperventilation, sweating, and even sometimes we get some stomach discomfort. These reactions are part of our body natural defense mechanism. But if the system is activated too often or for too long, it creates a feedback loop, basically, that actually contribute to a chronic anxiety disorder. This is when we have it. So whatever we just explained, if this is goes on and on for multiple times, this is when we start, taking into consideration that there will be a chronic anxiety disorder. This is the way it works. Essentially, the body remains in heightened state of alert even when no real threat exists because of whatever we just explained, the feedback loop, leading to persistent anxiety symptoms. Um, it is we thought like it will be really beneficial that we go through different types of anxiety disorder, such as the first one, the generalized anxiety. Generalized anxiety, it's mainly is constant anxiety about everything that you can think of. Nothing specific about your life. It could be finances, health, work, despite no major issues. But you will hear the typical complaint from the patient that, I just keep thinking about everything, around me in my life. Nothing specific, even though there's no major issues. Panic disorders. Panic disorder, basically, they go through episodes where they experience intense fear and discomfort. The episodes are referred to as a panic attacks. So we start with an episode which would, start with a panic attack, but the multiple episodes of those panic attacks can lead to what we call panic disorder. These attacks are recurring, and the frequency and severity of attacks, it really depends on how adverse the disorder is. Um, uh, those attacks usually happen out of the blue and often without any triggers. This is what makes them very distinguishable, from the other one. This is what we call panic attack, and they tend to fear. You tend to actually even have the feeling of fear to have it, having more panic attacks, increasing the stress and disrupting your daily life because of the preoccupied about the thought that something will happen to you. There are a lot of symptoms that are similar between panic attacks and anxiety. So it's worth to mention, such as feeling detached from reality, expecting the worst can happen, shortness of breath, rapid heartbeat, chest pain, dizziness, profuse sweating. So this is in terms panic. So far we've said about GAD, general, panic. The third one is social. Social, mainly it's how we fear of social situation, and being judged by others, being surrounded by people for gatherings, or even we can even perform refer it to those who are presenting something to other people. So avoiding such example would be avoiding speaking in meetings due to fear of embarrassment. And I think this is it's quite common. I can see from a lot of patient, and even from working in medical school, or even in our field. We continue with other types of anxiety. We have the specific phobia, which I do have this actually. The height, phobia from height, intense fear of a particular object or situation. And I think this is also very common. Um, Per guideline, I remember reading some article. They say it's. I think it's number two in terms the percentage of, like, how it was one of the highest percent that people actually report about their anxiety. It's the specific phobia. And we do have the separation anxiety, which is mainly when a child refuses to go to school due to fear of being away from parents. We tend to have that very common in a younger age. Now, there's the situational and chronic. Um, Maybe you can probably, relate, from the title, what exactly the situation anxiety. So the situation is more, basically, it's a temporary triggered by a specific stressor. Short-term resolves after the situation passes. Um, so perhaps we can say about that, like, exam. You're going through an exam period. Once you're done with the exam, then everything will go back to normal. There'll be no more anxiety. So we refer to this one to situational anxiety. The chronic, where persist, that on our daily basis, that it will affect our daily life and functionality, and it takes more than we were thinking. Like, it's not a few minutes, rather than actually a few days. Um, I think majority of you guys are aware of, how most of the symptoms, but it's worth to go over them. So we can later on we can discuss one of the scenarios that, to make more. to make it more interactive. So I would like just to emphasize that right now we're just going through the basic stuff, and later on with Dr. Ghaida, it will be more interactive in terms of scenarios, and we would like to hear from you guys. So it will be not just me and Dr. Ghaida will be talking. So one of the signs and symptoms, we start with the physical. Tachycardia, sweating, and we have the cognitive, which is excessive worry, intrusive thoughts, and behaviorally would be we avoid, we tend to be very restless, and emotionally fear and irritability.